Welcome to This Horror Real.
The motel door opened at 2:03 in the morning, and the only thing stopping the person outside from entering was the security latch stretched across the opening. I woke to the metal snapping tight and saw a man's hand wrapped around the inside edge of the door. He didn't knock. He didn't announce himself. He pushed harder, making the latch grind against the screws, holding it to the frame. For several seconds, I was too stunned to move. The room was dark except for the television's blue standby light and the yellow parking lot glow slipping through the gap. I could see part of a gray sleeve and the toe of a black work boot outside. Then the man quietly said, "Front desk," as if that explained why he had unlocked my room while I was sleeping. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. The beam hit the door and the hand disappeared immediately. The door pulled shut, but I didn't hear footsteps leaving. I stayed in bed, holding my phone toward the entrance, listening. The air conditioner rattled beneath the window. A truck passed on the highway behind the motel. Then the door handle slowly lowered again. Whoever was outside had a freaking key. He stayed outside. I called the front desk without taking my eyes off the handle. The phone rang 9 times before a tired-sounding woman answered. I whispered that someone had unlocked room 117 and was standing outside my door. There was a pause long enough for me to hear her typing. She asked for my name, then said nobody from the motel had been sent to my room. When I told her the man had identified himself as the front desk, her voice changed. She told me not to open the door and said she would check the security cameras. While she was speaking, a shadow moved across the curtains. My room was on the ground floor, facing the parking lot, and the curtains didn't close completely in the middle. Someone passed the window slowly, then stopped directly in front of the narrow gap. I turned off my phone's flashlight. The shadow remained there. The woman returned to the line and said the camera covering my section of the building was currently showing a frozen image. She offered to call the police, but before I could answer, there was a soft knock at the door. 3 evenly spaced taps. Then the man outside said my full name. I had never spoken my name loudly inside the motel. I had checked in shortly after 11, showed my driver's license, signed the registration card, and carried my bag directly to the room. The only employee I had seen was a man in his 40s wearing a red motel polo. He had copied something from my license onto the computer, handed me a plastic key card, and pointed toward the far end of the property. The woman now speaking to me claimed that man's shift had ended at midnight. I asked how the person outside knew my name. She said guest information was visible only to employees logged into the reservation system. As she spoke, something thin slid beneath the door. It was a folded piece of paper. I waited until the shadow moved away, then stepped quietly across the carpet and picked it up. It was a photocopy of my registration card. My name, home address, phone number, vehicle description, and license plate were all printed on it. Across the bottom, someone had written in blue ink, "You left something in your car." My vehicle was parked less than 20 feet from the room, but the passenger side door was now slightly open. I knew I had locked the car. I always press the button twice and listen for the second horn chirp, especially when staying at roadside motels. From behind the curtain, I could see the interior light glowing. The glove compartment hung open. My backpack had been moved from the passenger floor onto the seat. The man wasn't visible, but the driver's door had been left open like an invitation. The woman at the front desk said police were on the way, but the nearest unit was responding from another part of the county. She estimated 15 to 20 minutes. I asked whether there was another room I could reach through an interior hallway. She said the building had only exterior doors. The bathroom window was too small to climb through, and the rear wall faced a fenced drainage ditch. I was trapped in a room with one exit, and the person outside had already demonstrated that the lock meant nothing. I dragged the desk in front of the door, wedging it beneath the handle, then pulled the armchair against it. As I moved the furniture, my motel phone disconnected. When I tried calling the desk again, the line was dead. My cell phone still worked, so I called 911 myself. I gave the dispatcher the motel's name, my room number, and a description of what I had seen. She told me officers had already been notified and instructed me to stay inside. While I was answering her questions, I heard a plastic click near the floor. A key card had been pushed beneath the door. It looked identical to mine except for a small black mark in one corner. I didn't touch it. Seconds later, a text arrived from an unknown number. That key works on every room. Another message followed before I could respond. The latch won't hold forever. I showed the messages to the dispatcher by reading them aloud. She asked whether anyone besides motel staff had my number. I told her my phone number was printed on the registration card that had been slipped under the door. She advised me to move into the bathroom and lock that door too. Before I could do it, someone struck the motel door once with enough force to shake the frame. The security latch bent outward. One of its screws pulled halfway from the wood. I backed into the bathroom with my suitcase and closed the door, leaving the main room lights off. The bathroom lock was a simple push button that looked older than the motel. I braced my foot against the bottom and kept the dispatcher on speaker. Through the wall, I heard movement in room 119 next door. A drawer opened. Something heavy scraped across the floor. Then a man coughed. I told the dispatcher the neighboring room was occupied. She said officers would check it when they arrived. I knocked against the bathroom wall and called out, asking the person next door to contact police. The movement stopped instantly. A few seconds later, my phone received another text. Don't make this harder. Whoever had my number could hear me through the wall. Either the man outside had entered room 119, or there was more than one person involved. I lowered my voice and told the dispatcher what had happened. She instructed me not to speak again unless necessary. Then I heard the door to room 119 open, followed by footsteps crossing the concrete walkway. They stopped outside my room. The first impact pushed the desk several inches across the carpet. The second ripped one of the latch screws completely from the frame. I heard two men whispering outside. One told the other to lift the handle while he pushed. They weren't pretending to be motel employees anymore. They were working together. The dispatcher told me officers were less than 5 minutes away. 5 minutes sounded impossible. The third impact broke the latch plate away from the wall, but the desk and chair kept the door from opening fully. Wood cracked near the lock. One of the men shoved his arm through the gap and tried to reach around the furniture. I could hear him breathing. He knocked a lamp from the desk and it crashed onto the floor. I shut off the bathroom light and climbed into the tub, holding the heavy metal lid from the toilet tank against my chest because it was the only object I could use as a weapon. Then the pushing stopped. A man inside the room said, "She's in the bathroom." The main door had opened far enough for one of them to squeeze through. I heard his shoes move across the carpet, crunching over pieces of the broken lamp. He didn't search the room randomly. He walked directly toward the bathroom. The handle turned once, then stopped against the lock. He pressed his shoulder into the door. The thin wood bowed inward. I held the toilet tank lid above my shoulder and prepared to swing if the door came open. Through the bottom gap, I saw black work boots, the same kind I had seen outside when the motel door first opened. The man stood there without speaking for several seconds. Then a siren sounded somewhere nearby. The boots turned. He ran across the room and the exterior door slammed against the furniture as he forced his way out. A vehicle engine started in the parking lot. Tires squealed. By the time the first this police cruiser turned into the property, both men were gone. 2 deputies removed the furniture and escorted me outside. My car had been searched, but nothing valuable appeared to be missing. The contents of my backpack were scattered across the front seat. My work laptop was still there. So was my wallet, which I had hidden beneath the spare tire cover in the trunk. The deputies said the men might have been looking for cash, medication, or personal information. That explanation didn't make sense to me. They already had my address and phone number. They had risked breaking into an occupied room after confirming that I was awake. Room 119 was unlocked. Inside, the television was on, but the room had not been rented through the motel's system. There were no bags, clothing, or toiletries. The mattress had been pulled several inches from the wall. Behind it, deputies found a small hole cut through the drywall between room 119 and my room. It wasn't large enough to crawl through, but it was large enough to hear conversations clearly. Fresh white dust covered the carpet. Whoever had made it had done so recently. The woman from the front desk met us outside. Her name was Denise, and she looked genuinely frightened. She said the man who checked me in was named Aaron and had worked at the motel for 8 months. According to the schedule, he had left at midnight. His employee key card was supposed to be returned at the end of every shift, but the card was missing from the lockbox. Denise checked the electronic lock record for my room. My guest card had opened the door once at 11:18 p.m. when I entered. At 2:03 a.m., the door had been opened using a master maintenance card assigned to Aaron. The same card had accessed room 119 at 12:41 a.m. and the motel's private office at 1:07 a.m. The office contained the reservation computer and the printer used to copy registration forms. Denise tried calling Aaron, but his phone went directly to voicemail. One deputy drove to the address listed in his employee file. It belonged to an empty house that had been abandoned for nearly a year. The motel's live camera had shown a frozen image, but the recorder in the back office had continued saving footage. Deputies reviewed it while I waited near the lobby. At 1:52 a.m., Aaron appeared on camera wearing a gray jacket over his uniform. Another man stepped out of room 119. His face was covered by a hood, but his black work boots were clearly visible. Aaron gave him a printed sheet and pointed toward my car. The video showed the hooded man testing my car doors. The driver's door opened without resistance. That confused me until one deputy inspected the lock and found a thin strip of metal wedged beside the window sill. The men had forced the mechanism without breaking the glass. At 2:02, Aaron walked to my door and used the MasterCard. After the security latch stopped him, he looked directly at the camera and smiled. Then he stepped out of view. The hooded man remained near my window while Aaron entered room 119. From there, they listened through the hole in the wall and coordinated by text. Aaron was arrested 2 days later at another budget motel 30 miles away. Police found him sleeping in a room registered under a false name. The second man was gone, but officers recovered master key cards from 4 different motel chains, copied guest registration forms, blank room keys, lock-picking tools, and a notebook filled with license plate numbers. A detective called me after searching Aaron's phone. He said Aaron and the unidentified man appeared to target guests traveling alone. They used registration information to choose people from outside the area, preferably those staying only one night. They searched vehicles first, looking for firearms, cash, prescription bottles, company equipment, or documents revealing where the guest worked. If they found something valuable, they entered the room using an employee key. If the guest woke up, Aaron claimed to be checking a maintenance issue or correcting a booking mistake. Most people were confused enough to accept the explanation. The detective believed I was the first guest who had used the security latch and immediately called police. I never stayed in room 117 again. The motel refunded my money, paid for the damage to my car, and closed for several days while investigators inspected the rooms. Aaron was charged with burglary, unlawful use of personal information, and several other offenses connected to earlier victims. The second man was never identified. 3 weeks later, after I had returned home, I received one final text from the same number used that night. It contained a photograph of my house. The picture had been taken from across the street during daylight. My car was visible in the driveway, and the curtains in my living room were open. Beneath the image was a single sentence: Aaron talked too much. Police traced the number to a prepaid phone that had been activated that morning and discarded near a highway rest stop before I received the message. Officers increased patrols around my neighborhood, but no suspicious person was found. I changed my phone number, installed cameras, and stopped using the address printed on my driver's license whenever a hotel allowed another form of identification. I still travel for work, but I inspect every motel room before I let the door close behind me. I test the deadbolt. I pull on the handle. I check whether the security latch is secured with long screws or barely attached to the frame. I cover gaps in the curtains, block the door with furniture, and never assume a uniform means someone belongs there. Aaron was caught, but the man in the black work boots was not. I don't know how he found my house, whether he followed me, or whether Aaron had already shared my information before his arrest. What would you have done if your motel door opened at 2 in the morning and the person outside knew your full name? Share your answer in the comments and tell us about any real experience that made you realize you weren't as safe as you thought. Like this video, subscribe to This Horror Real, and turn on notifications so you never miss another This Horror Real story. Because sometimes the most frightening part isn't that someone found a way inside, it's realizing they may still know exactly where you live.